Hey everybody, welcome back to the Rant. I'm Rob, and with me is my partner Josh. Josh, wave hi to the audience.
Can you hear me vigorously waving?
It's amazing how fast he is at that. It's years of practice have gone into that wave, I tell you. It's better than the Queen's. All right, so tonight we're going to cover a topic which, well, to be honest, I think everybody definitely has an opinion on it, and that is series slash franchises that, in our opinions, have been destroyed or actually destroyed in some cases. So, Josh, if you don't mind, I think I'm going to lead off tonight.
Sure.
All right, the two that I have picked for my prime examples are actually old series. They started, well, the first one started on the original PlayStation. That is the Legacy of Kain series. For those of you who are unfamiliar with it, the Legacy of Kain series was all about vampires, essentially, and it was a very dark, gothic, puzzle-driven series. And it is gone and will never come back, and that makes me sad. But it was one of those series that, for me, the story really pulled me in. It's just, unfortunately, there were a lot of issues with it, like the original the original Legacy of Kain game, Blood Omen, I believe it was called, was it was shitty graphics, like really shitty graphics. And unfortunately, that was at the time where graphics kind of meant everything to people because, early PlayStation generation, everything had to look pretty or it just didn't sell. Or, have those really jagged polygon boobs like Tomb Raider. I'm sure that would have helped. Um, yeah, odd side note, right? The series kind of bounced around a little bit as for what it wanted to be. It was originally this exploration puzzle solving type of series, right? Like, you'd kind of have the entire world open to you, but you wouldn't be able to go everywhere quite yet because you didn't have the skills or the items you needed to go to certain places. And that's what both of the first games were like, both in the Blood Omen series and the Soul Reaver series, which were both tied together. The storylines were hardcore linked together. You had to kind of play both of them in order to understand everything that was going on. And the problem, well, first off, the first game, Soul Reaver, Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, they had to scrap something like 60% of the game because they ran out of time. Like they couldn't meet the deadline, so they hunked off this huge chunk of the game, and it's clearly evident that things are missing because there are several cutscenes towards the end where there's these weird moments that you're like, wait, that wasn't in the game. What the hell is that? And they're they're supposed to be like you watching kind of recorded memories of
Mm-hmm.
what has already happened. It's sad, really. The game was still solid, but when you find out how much was missing, a lot of these little notes that you pick up on the way make sense as to why they just didn't fit in. And unfortunately, with each title that came after that in the series, in both the Blood Omen and in the Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver ones, they just became further and further removed from what the games originally were. Like the second Blood Omen, there really wasn't any puzzles, to be honest. It sort of became more of an action game, and the only thing that sort of resembled puzzles was a lot of switch flipping. Like literally, you kind of went from point A to point B all over the map just to flip switches. It was Everybody actually got really pissed off about that because it's kind of like, oh my god, another switch to flip. That was unexpected. One of those deals.
Kind of like a God of War puzzle.
Yeah, exactly. It had very little substance to it, which for being the second installment in the Blood Omen chunk of games, it was visually it was better than the original Blood Omen. Story wise, it was okay, but it was also a little confusing. They didn't do a terribly good job syncing up what was going on in the games so that it made sense when you played all of them. And the Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver titles did just as bad a job. It actually, from one to two, they scrapped the whole exploration thing almost altogether, and it became a very linear path that you had to go down. Like it was literally just like there was no free roam. You could go to places, but it didn't really work as an exploration tool. It was just like, oh, you got through the door, the next door's down the hall kind of thing. It wasn't like you had to go find the key for the next door or anything like that. Also, they, for some reason, started to focus more heavily on combat over everything else. So, I mean, just from one to two, they had already kind of started to break down what the series was. And then by the third installment in the Legacy of Kain games, the puzzles were really simple and it was just hardcore combat and not good combat. It was like flaky combo combat
Mm-hmm.
where like basically just the more times you hit a guy, the better it was for you. That was it. It was like a button mashing combo thing, and the story became very convoluted and turned on itself a lot. There were chunks of stuff that didn't make sense, and to top it all off, the game ended with one of those clearly needs to be continued kind of setups.
Ah, yes.
So by then they kind of had just destroyed their fan base because everybody that loved what the original games were, it wasn't the same game to them anymore, and me included. By the time I got to the third game, I was kind of like, this isn't a Legacy of Kain game. I'm not sure what's going on here, but this isn't that fun. I mean, I'd like the first Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver title. I played through that like 20 times, and it's not a short game. It's a good like 40 hours to do everything in there. So I mean, the series just it started to stray from what it originally was, and it kind of destroyed itself in the process. So that is one of my favorite destroyed series, and unfortunately, it will never come back because, from what I understand, all the developers that held the licenses for that have more or less folded. Like, I think the last one, I think it was Silicon Knights. I think they were the last ones to hold the licensing rights to that, and they did one of the more recent Tomb Raider games on the 360. Underworld. They did Underworld. So I think it was Silicon Knights. There were two teams that were attached to the Legacy games, and it was either Silicon Knights or Crystal Dynamics. I can't remember which one survived, but either way, I don't think they're doing anything now. So it's one of those series that's just lost to time at this point. What do you think, Josh? You think I was thorough enough on that?
Yeah, it was just perfectly.
I feel like I did just ramble for about 8 minutes. All right, let me hand it off to you. What's your first destroyed series?
Um, man. Well, I guess the first one that comes to mind when I think of destroyed series, is the Assassin's Creed series. Because they had a good run for me, at least. I know you've only played the one, which was a very early on game. And actually, Assassin's Creed 2 is one of my favorites, but that's besides the point. Once you get past the Ezio trilogy and you start going into the new modern day graphics and stuff, gameplay starts to kind of diminish, especially in Assassin's Creed 3. The free running and everything was starting to get a little crappier. Black Flag was good, mostly because it was all ship battles, and so was Rogue because it was all ship battles, and they spent more time on the ship stuff rather than the on-land stuff. And then the series just went completely downhill when Assassin's Creed Unity came out, and that game just was so bad. I was questioning my sanity throughout the whole thing. And then
It's terrible.
I mean, even though Assassin's Creed Syndicate is better than Unity, it is still quite below par, especially from what I've been. I love the Assassin's Creed series. I've played every single one of them. Unfortunately, I've played the bad with the good. So, I mean, the series has been going downhill rather. Actually, after Black Flag, kind of went and just did a straight nosedive down to the ground, which is unfortunate because it's a game series that I really enjoy and really loved, and I keep buying them to see if they're gonna get any better, but I don't know if they're going to. And one of the main reasons for the game's going so far downhill, like I mentioned before, the free running is just. I don't know what they did. It was near perfect in Revelations, which was the third game in the Ezio trilogy. Even though Revelations wasn't my favorite, it was still good enough that I played through the story. I didn't do any of the extra stuff because it was all BS. in the future stuff, but um, I mean, the Ezio trilogy is probably the best thing to come out of the Assassin's Creed universe. And then Black Flag is also a really spectacular game. It won my game of the year when it came out in 2013. So, I mean, it has its ups and downs, but now it's really nosediving and hitting the ground hard. Mostly because the free running's gone, the story's kind of been thrown out the window. The glitches in the game make it completely unplayable now. There's just mindless tasks of going to fetch things or find things, and you get minimal rewards for hours and hours of searching. They took out the wanted system, which has been in Assassin's Creed since day one, and with the smaller maps that they're making now for Unity and Syndicate, and they totally need to bring back this wanted system. I know it didn't work very well on the Black Flag and Assassin's Creed 3 and Rogue because hell, those were giant maps, and no one would know you're wanted in Cape Town and you're all the way in it's. So they were like, oh, it doesn't work anymore because our maps are too big. Well, guess what? You shrunk your map down to Syndicate's map is so small, it makes Assassin's Creed 2 look like a huge area, the Roman, and Assassin's Creed 2 had like three small maps in it.
Yeah, I did play that one. It didn't seem quite as big as the first one.
No, it definitely was not, and I think it wasn't as big because of the fact that most of the stuff you went through was city stuff, and they wanted to really capture the essence of Renaissance Italy. But yeah, that's. I mean, I don't think I still love the series. The series really petered off for me, and I'm really hoping that next year they come back with a 1-2 punch. I mean, these little mini games they're putting out are kind of interesting for like an hour, but they're really not. They're really not anything I really would want to play every freaking day.
Right. So it's just been like a complete drop off from what the original game was for you that has kind of destroyed it?
Yeah, it's all gone. All my love for the game, the series is just gone.
It's weird. It is weird how so many developers completely destroy these awesome franchises by constantly improving on what they think they need to improve, and by doing so they just kind of mess up all the stuff that most people really enjoyed. I mean, truthfully, if I could cut off that like last 5 minutes of the first game where they're like, "Oh, aliens," it was a terrific game up to that point. The mechanics were pretty solid. I really didn't have any huge complaints about how the game played. The frame rate never really dropped. The graphics were solid. The wanted thing was really nice. I liked having to all of a sudden kind of blend into a crowd because I went through the marketplace where I killed a dude 10 minutes ago and everybody knows what I look like now. You're right. They dropped off all the good notes and put in sour ones in its place. It is depressing how many developers do that. I mean, I think you agreed with me. We weren't going to talk about Mass Effect because that's just like this big glaring example of fucking up a series.
Yeah, I think we had a whole episode to that too.
We did. We went off on that thing a few episodes back, and I mean we could totally do it again with fresh points. To be honest, because it's just like never ending how much shit they did to that. But man, you know what? I think if you're done, then I will go to my second.
Go right ahead.
Second Destroyed series. Again, it's another old series, but it was an RPG that was very, very cool to me, and I really loved how it was working out. And I mean, it's the Xenosaga series back on the PS2, and it was working out to be a really, really cool anime-esque RPG when it first hit the console. I mean, the first game, it wasn't a terribly long RPG. I think about 60 hours or so was what you needed to dump into it to do pretty much everything, including the hidden bosses. So that's not too bad, especially for an RPG. I mean, a lot of those Final Fantasy ones, you got to dump a minimum of 100 hours in before you've got enough juice to take on the hidden bosses. But here's where things went downhill and they started to destroy it. Bear in mind, the series was originally slated for 6 installments, and they capped it at 3.
Oh.
The second one, apparently the first one did so well that by the second one, they're like, shit, we can totally just do what we want and people will buy it. First thing that they did, which really fucked it up, have you ever heard of an RPG that doesn't have a store system in it?
I guess I have now.
This is the only RPG I've ever encountered where there wasn't anywhere you could buy items. There was a place to sell items that you picked up, but it was part of a extremely long and tedious side quest, which got you something that wasn't even worth the effort. Essentially, the side quest was you were helping to pay off the debt of the guy who owned the ship that you used to get all over the map in the game. It was ridiculous, and the only way to really do it was to replay the final boss, like I think it was about 100 times, because you'd get this one item that was resellable for about 15,000, and you had to pay off like a $4 million debt from for the captain. So
Man.
that sucked. They essentially they took a game that was almost perfect in my opinion. I mean, it even had a really unique combat system for the battles. Now, it was turn-based, which a lot of people really don't like. I mean, personally, I enjoyed it. I thought that's a cool system to put in there because it gives you a moment to think, and you don't have to constantly be running around. I'm not as huge a fan of the action-based stuff.
Hmm.
But they took the original system, they scrapped about a third of what the battle system was. You had this action point thing that let you do certain attacks and in certain amounts, and they got rid of that and they made it really complicated. They took out the action point system, and in the second one they turned it into this zone system where if you initiated an attack with one button, it would hit in a certain zone on your enemy, like the head or the torso or the legs. Each enemy had a weak spot that you had to figure out and attack systematically to put into this kind of stunned state where you could actually do damage, because everything up to that point was almost worthless. So basically, just from 1 to 2, they made so many mistakes and made the game so hard and long and tedious that they destroyed their audience base, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't even tell you how many hours I invested in the game because the counter stops at 99 hours and 99 minutes. Like, it stops counting at that point. It just says that. Like, the save file, it doesn't say anything more than that. So, truthfully, I think I must have dumped somewhere around 200 hours into the game to accomplish everything. Mostly because there were some really, really bad glitches attached to the hidden bosses. Like, there was one. In the game, you had mechs that you could get into, right? And in the second one, they made entire level areas where you had to be in the mech for the whole level. One of the secret bosses, you had to fight in the mechs. The game would hardcore crash if that boss battle exceeded 20 minutes. Like, every time. Like, I set a timer and I did it like 6 times in a row just to see if this was like some sort of freak out. It wasn't. Literally, right at about 20 minutes, the game would crash. Like, it just, for whatever reason, they fucked it up and it couldn't handle more than 20 minutes for that one fight. So the majority of the time I took to level up in that game was just so I could do that fight in under 20 minutes and not have the game crash.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah, it was bad. I mean, the story was still good. I still enjoyed the game, but it had been so far removed from the original that I think they probably killed off at least 80% of their fan base with what they did on that one. Plus, they switched out the graphic style really hardcore. They went from this really anime-looking style to a really realistic style, which the anime look was what a lot of people really liked about the game. It was very memorable.
Uh-huh.
And then, by the third title, they'd lost pretty much everybody. So even though they improved it, they kept the graphic style from the second one, which sucked, but you can deal with it. They fixed the combat system. They put stores back in. They did everything they could, but by then they had just hacked apart their fan base to the point where they had to cap it off at a third game. So unfortunately, the game wraps up with several loose ends just kind of hanging in the wind that you kind of have to guess at what may have happened.
Oh, lovely.
And the story was this really, really grand, like universe encompassing storyline, and it felt like it needed at least 6 games to tell it correctly. And
Oh.
with three, it's like a brick wall kind of thing. I mean, it was still an okay ending, but also like the one main character, Cosmos, gets the shittiest end of the deal for the ending. I'm not gonna tell everybody listening what the ending was. You can probably look it up on YouTube, but like for one of the characters that suffers the most, they get the short end of the stick, like really hardcore. So it's just I don't know what the hell the team Monolith, which not the Monolith that has made some recent titles, and I think they're based in Australia. This was a Monolith company that came from Japan, okay?
Okay.
I don't know what the hell they were thinking, but they shredded a series that in my opinion had the potential to rival the Final Fantasy fans. And they just shredded it, and we will never see another Xenosaga game. Ironically, there are some stuff that's attached to that series called the Xenoblade games, right?
Hmm.
They're sort of loosely related to that universe, but it's still not the same thing by any stretch of the imagination. And this is one of those games that hit the market so hardcore when it first came out that they actually got a custom iPod made for the game. Like there was a contest when it first came out. Like if you beat the game and got like this code out of it and put it on their website, you could win the custom Xenosaga iPod. And this was back in 2003 when the iPod had just hit the market, and the one that they were offering was like an $800 iPod. So they had picked up some clout with that first title. All of it shattered. All of it shattered by the second title. That one actually kind of leaves a bitter taste in my mouth. It was one of those games that I mean I still love the series, but it could have been so much better. I mean, I get the feeling that Assassin's Creed was kind of the same way for you. Like it could have been this monolithic, awesome series that you could have just lived on, and it almost feels like they want to railroad it into the ground.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely feels that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, what's your next completely demolished series?
It's a series that it breaks my heart to say this, but the last 2 games just crashed and burned, and unfortunately the last 2 games in the series. And this comes to a surprise, but the Arkham series, the Batman Arkham series, has completely disappointed me 2 times in a row now on their last 2 games, and it's unfortunate because I love Batman to death. I hate to say it, but they both just, oh man.
It's like a nut shot, isn't it?
Well, where to start? Let's see. I mean, the Arkham Asylum game was a fresh new take on Batman, in the video game industry. It definitely added a lot of mechanics and things that a lot of other Batman games never had. It also had a dark, deep story. It was rich. It had plenty of characters. They were all cartoony, just like well, they weren't cartoony, but they were, they still had that cartoon aspect of them from the comic books.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Arkham Asylum wasn't the perfect game. I know the ending wasn't as strong as everyone wanted it to be, but it was still like, at the time, like Batman Arkham Asylum was the game to have. And that was the same year that like Modern Warfare 2 came out and the Battlefield series was starting to take off. I mean, Batman Arkham Asylum was on top of most people's lists. And then the sequel came around, which came out a few years later, which was Arkham City, and that game topped the charts, and that was my favorite. It was my favorite game for a long, long, long time, and before other games started coming out this year, which I won't name right now. But I mean, Arkham City was like the perfect blend of, it's got the side missions that are interesting and fun to do, and the Riddler trophies and the collectibles are all cool and fun to find and challenging. And the character designs and the story is all there, and it's still got that comic book feel to it. It has the deep story that takes off from Arkham Asylum, and it has all your favorite characters in there. And I mean, Arkham City is like, if you want to look at any game and say this is a perfect game, Arkham City is nearly there. So then, I guess people got too bored of waiting for a game, and so Rocksteady handed off the rights to the Arkham series to a different company, and they decided to make a game called Arkham Origins. Arkham Origins was a complete shitfest most of the way through. I know a lot of hardcore Batman fans like myself will agree with me, but people who don't really know Batman, don't really know the series, will be like, "Oh yeah, this game's really good." Let's just start with the basics. I mean, the story was just dumb. It was about, Batman's origin, of course, and for some reason people put some assassins on him, and right from the get-go you go, wow. This story is really pieced together from a multitude of different Batman stories, because you got the Under the Red Hood story going on, which is it kind of mimics that. If you've ever seen that movie, it's got I mean, it's just a jumble of different Batman stories all toppled onto top of each other, and a lot of the villains in the game don't even get like an actual part in the main stories. Most of them are just like side missions, and it's like, really, you advertise this game that's like, oh, the assassins are going to get Batman, and it's like the first assassin, a quote unquote assassin you meet is Killer Croc, and you're like, Killer Croc's not an assassin. He's never been an assassin. He's hired muscle for Black Mask, who is quote unquote the protagonist of the game that was advertised. But of course, guess who shows up under the Black mask? It's the Joker, because apparently we can't have any Arkham game without the Joker in it, because fuck, we won't sell as many, right? So other than bringing back the Joker for this game, which completely, I mean, sure, it makes sense. It's an Origins game. The other thing that really pisses me off about this game, and the Arkham series is just kind of ruined the series for me. They have the word Arkham in the title, but guess what? Arkham Asylum isn't even mentioned, isn't even in there. There's nothing linking the game to the Arkham series besides from the names of the characters. So, I mean, I don't know. So Arkham
that is really bad when a franchise is fucked up so terribly that you can't even keep your thoughts straight on how much you hate it.
Yeah, and
that's terrible.
And I mean, a lot of the side missions were just they were just search and destroy kind of things, like, oh, destroy the Penguin's weapon cache. Like, okay, go destroy, this and that. I will say the good things about this game, the boss fights were really on point. There's a Firefly boss battle in that one I really enjoyed. The Deathstroke one was really fun. The other thing that I did actually enjoy about Origins was my goodness. They had an origin story for Bane that was a little bit different than the comic books, but it really showed how he became like a lumbering lug. Although they went a little bit too far. They made him like brain dead after it, and it's like that doesn't really make sense, because Bane in the Arkham Asylum and Arkham City games are like, he's fully functioning and able to do things. But I mean, still, it at least gave a good origin story for the characters. Even though they lied to you and they actually copied a lot of the boss battles from different games, it was still better than what I'm about to talk about, which is Arkham Knight. And it really stabs me in the heart to give Arkham Knight a bad review. And I also, if you go on my YouTube channel, which is Jarvis's Opinion, I have the new Arkham. I have a full review for the game on there under my video game reviews tab. So I'm just gonna go over a little bit of it. Because there is a lot wrong with this game, and right off the bat when I bought it and I played it, I thought it was pretty awesome, like the first run through I did, because I wasn't really, I was just kind of more like, oh, it's Batman, it's finally here, the Arkham Knight, the final game to the series, this has to be better than Origins. And I'm playing and I'm playing and I'm playing, and I get through the whole thing, and I give it a good review on my 3 second reviews, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's great. And then I play through the game again, and I have a more clear head, and I'm like, oh boy. Let's start off with the big thing. They were advertising this, and I warned everyone. I warned everyone on my Jarshcast. I said if they overuse the Batmobile, the game is going to suck. And what did they do? The fucking Batmobile is used in almost every single level.
Holy
It's
cow.
such an important part to the game that it just sucks. It really does suck. The controls for the Batmobile, like they like, you know how normally you would stop with like L2 or something.
Hmm.
Well, now it's like L2 is the transform into the Batmobile battle mode. So and O is the stop. It's kind of just awkward for me because a lot of racing games is like
Yeah,
L2 is
yeah.
the brake, R2 is the go. Man, and it's really hard to control that thing, especially at full speed and going around those corners. Like, I thought they would make it a little bit easier to control, but apparently they didn't. I mean, sure, you still have the option to glide around the city and do stuff like that, but with the way the story goes, apparently, this Arkham Knight guy comes kind of random into the series because they didn't even mention him before this. He comes in, he's like, here's my army, and he's got these mechanized tanks and stuff, and you have to blow them up, and he lays mines around the city randomly that you have to blow up for a side mission, which, it's... The story is really dumb. It starts off good. I mean, you start off, you're going against Scarecrow. He's got the Ace Chemicals building locked down, and you go in there. It gives a really good introduction to the Arkham Knight and Scarecrow. And then they're like, hey, we need to introduce a character who doesn't really need to be in this game. I want you to guess. I really want you to guess. Who do you think they included in this game who shouldn't have been included?
Oh man. You know, the one character that I feel like they just should have stepped away from, like, at least for one title, would have been the Joker.
You got it. they they can I spoil Arkham City for you? If you have you played it yet?
Just no, just go for it. I
Okay.
don't give a shit
At
anymore.
the end of Arkham City, the Joker dies, and it's a really emotional death, and it's actually a really fitting death for him too. And his blood is in Batman's blood because Joker was infected with the Titan formula, and he was dying throughout the whole thing, and so he did a blood transfusion with Batman. And so Batman has his blood, and he gets cured and stuff. But apparently, there's trace amounts of the Joker's blood still in Batman's veins in Arkham Knight. So Batman's slowly turning insane. So all of a sudden, randomly, the Joker just pops out of nowhere, and it's supposed to be like one of those wham, hits you in the face moments. But that moment happens in Ace Chemicals, and then the screen blacks out for me. I don't know if everyone else got this, but it blacks out for me and says, not finished installing 25%. And I was like,
Oh my god.
are you fucking serious? You have me go through the first hour of the game, and then it's like, hey, we only got 25% done loaded. Here's the big part in the game. We're just going to stop you here and make you wait. And I was like, really? So the story goes on, and there's a character who's new to the Arkham series in this game, not just the Arkham Knight, but also Jason Todd. And if you don't know who Jason Todd it is, he's the second Robin, and the Joker murders him, and then Raj Al Ghul or Ra's al Ghul, however you want to pronounce it, brings him back to life, and he turns up being the Red Hood. Well, in this game, since they only show Jason Todd for this game, and they didn't mention him at all in the other games, who could the Arkham Knight be? Duh, it's Jason Todd. And you know this exactly from the beginning. The only thing that tripped me up was the DLC that had Red Hood in it. I was like, oh, well, maybe it's not him because of... But once you start playing the game, I mean, the story is just so stupid. It's so straightforward. And I haven't even gotten halfway through this. The boss fights? Oh, wait, there's no boss fights in the fucking game. Oops. The only quote-unquote boss fight that's really in the game, the Arkham Knight has a tank, and you have to hit the weak spot, and then you run away, and then he loses you, and then you go and hit the weak spot again, and it's ridiculous. It's stupid. There's another boss, kind of like a boss fight, where you just punch the guy, and he has a health bar, and you just punch him a bunch of times. They decided to go the route with like some of the minor characters, which is another point that I would like to make. A lot of the characters are unused to their full potential, but there's a few characters that have health bar, like Two-Face. When you finally confront him, he has like a little health bar that you just punch him a bunch of times and take him down. And then, speaking of unused characters, Deathstroke's in this game as well. But guess what? The final battle with him, he just has the Arkham Knight's tank. It's a little bit better, and that's it. You blow the tank up and you knock him out. There's no like real actual fight with Deathstroke, which would have been freaking sweet. Of course not. Why would I think that they would do something like that, huh? I don't know.
Oh my god.
So
I didn't know it was that badly messed up.
It took me a while to realize this, and I always try to keep my my fanboy below the belt.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's I love Batman, but I hate bad games, and this game is it's not terrible. Like, I'm really just nailing at the really bad points, but it's not a terrible game, but it's still not the best thing they could ever made. And the characters, they redesigned them, like Harley Quinn and stuff. It just didn't look right with the new, like, more realistic thing they went for. It's like, if you're gonna have the Arkham series, just keep it kind of cartoony, keep it kind of lighthearted at points. Yeah. But instead, they brought in here's our really great redone version of all these people. And finally, the last point I'd like to make is, just like with Arkham Origins, there's a lot of unused potential in the game, especially with characters. Like Harley Quinn, who was a big part of the trailers and stuff like that, she gets a 30-minute level and then she's done for the rest of the game. Or characters like Tim Drake, who's your partner in crime, you only use him for like 2 missions, and then he shows up at the end of the game, and it's just like, really? What? Penguin, he's just a gun runner in this game. He's a 1-2 punch. And a lot of the side missions that I will talk about in a few seconds, they're only like 3 missions and then it's over. And they're almost the exact formula that you would use for every single one. So Professor Pig, he has, you find 3 dead bodies and then you find his lair and you beat him up. Firefly, you find 3 burning buildings and chase him 3 times, and finally at the end of the 3rd one you beat him up. Man-Bat, he's flying around the city, you find him 3 times, and you give him the antidote on the 3rd time. Oh my gosh. I really don't want to keep going. I don't want to, really go off the spectrum, but you can really tell that I'm really disappointed in this game, and the series just really dropped off. Like, Arkham Origins was, like, tolerable, was a tolerable bad, but Arkham Knight, it's just like, it's gone. It's... Mm-hmm. Like I said, I mean, the game, the Batman mechanics and stuff, it's still all there and it's still fun to play. But if you think about it too much, then it just becomes like what I'm doing.
They shredded the stuff that you loved. I mean, they left the mechanics in there, but yeah, they shredded all the other stuff. And I think it makes sense that you're still amped up, because this was a really recent, like, wound on one of your favorite series and characters. I get it.
Yeah.
The only reason I didn't freak out so much about the Xenosaga thing is the last game came out in like 2005 or 2006, something like that. So I've had time to kind of cool down on that one. Even though my irritation and rage was just as equal to your Batman stuff now, and I'm disappointed too. I'm a pretty big Batman fan myself, and if the games are that far removed from what they were when it started, it's the same bullshit lesson that every game developer needs to learn, and that is, don't try to fix what's not broken.
Right, yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I really didn't complain at all about any of the little weird glitches that happened in the Arkham Asylum title. I feel like if they had just stuck to how that one was for all the remaining games, I would have at least been satisfied with them, and I would have purchased all of them. But I already felt a bit of a change from Asylum to City that kind of didn't set well with me and irked me a little bit. Clearly they went off the reservation on 3 and 4, so...
Well, yeah, I don't know. I know my thoughts were a little jumbled up through that whole thing, so if you would be so kind,
you covered all the points, man.
Yeah, I have
That was
more
a pretty solid rant, in my opinion.
I have more concise thoughts in my review. So if you want, you can just link it down in the description. So
Definitely. We will drop the link down in the description for this.
thank you, thank
Hey, man, you need closure, and part of the rant is bringing closure to angry gamers.
you. Well, I guarantee there's going to be another like Arkham game, but I think I think Rocksteady's going towards a Superman route, so we'll see what they do.
Oh, God.
So Superman
That's
64.
not a series we need to revisit.
They're
I
gonna
think
try.
anybody that played the older ones will agree with me. This is not a road we need to go down again.
They're certainly going to try. I have faith in Rocksteady. You know, they're a good company, but WB Games just loves to pick games apart and be like, okay, this has to be DLC. This has to be DLC. Yeah. Oh, there's one point I didn't cover. The DLC in Batman Arkham Knight. It's all just one-shot levels and then skins and different challenge packs. So it's like, you know, you're getting like nothing pretty much. It's like this is all stuff that really could have been in the game. These little tiny stories that they have. Like here's a Catwoman DLC that's like 30 minutes long, maybe an hour long if you're having trouble with the stuff inside of it. Oh, a Tim Drake one. It's just all one-shot levels. It's like really I paid $2 for this, or
Yeah,
it's just you know DLC's
it's
ruining things.
yeah. It's
And I know,
definitely a bad sign when you feel gypped over $2.
yeah. But hey,
Ay, ay.
all right, that's good for me. There's
Well, folks,
one thing
it
you
has
don't mess
been a good
with me,
night.
and that is Batman. That is you do not mess with Batman. That's one thing you do not do, and they did it.
Mhm.
They messed up.
We all have our own little series that when you touch on them, it's like fucking with your happy childhood memories. It's wrong. I probably, if I wanted to, I could have filled an entire hour bitching about Spider-Man and the injustices they've done to him in the last few years. We'll save that for another run.
Sounds good to me.
It's been fun, folks. And you know what? We'd like to know what series have been destroyed in your eyes. Leave us a comment. And you know what? Like, subscribe, share the video. If you thought we did a good job, we'd appreciate knowing. This has been The Rant. And, oh, you know what? I almost forgot. We need to remind everybody, you gotta go visit our channels and check out our stuff. We got The Rant channel, which hosts this podcast, which is also called The Rant. I know, it's redundant, but, you know, cut us a break. We also have 5-minute reviews and the Versus series brought to you by Josh, our very own Josh. Josh, please tell them about your channel because it's such a magical wonderland over there.
My channel, I upload weekly videos. I have my own podcast called Jarshcast on there. I also have video game reviews on there, which I do. I try to keep them short and concise, and then I give them a rating. I also have what my channel is most known for, I guess, is YouTube Haikus on there. I just uploaded a new one, number 25. You can check that one out if you want to. The channel is called Jarsh's Opinion, because my original series on there was called Jarsh's Opinion, and my number one rule for YouTube is don't name your channel after your first series, but we all live and learn, I guess.
Yeah, but we all repeat the same damn mistake.
We do. But yeah, if you want to, you can check that stuff out. I do try to keep my content at a high. I'm not in it for the money, so you know I'm coming from the heart with all my videos. So I appreciate if you look at it.
We will leave links to those in the description, folks. This has been The Rant. Good night.